Four Sigmatic is a functional food company based here in the US. We've been around for 10 years. Out of that, 6 years in the US. So we started overseas and brought it here. And we make coffee that has these functional ingredients, these mushrooms and adaptogens that people now talk about, but didn't talk so much about a few years ago. And it's basically functional foods. We make better for you coffee and better for you proteins that we add these ingredients that have, besides the protein and the coffee, have functional benefits to productivity, energy, sleep, whatever.
Now, I can't possibly share with you everything that this man has accomplished. He is a true thought leader in the field of coffee, one of my favorite vices, actually my only vice, if you believe that, and mushrooms, of which I cannot wait to hear more about. So without any further ado, because when this podcast is over, I know you are going to be Googling this guy like crazy. Welcome to today's podcast, our guest, Tero, and I'm going to say his last name wrong, even though I asked him how you pronounce it. Isokauppila? Something like that?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Thanks.
The founder and CEO of Four Sigmatic. Okay. So there is so much here to talk about, but I have to ask you this question because I find it really hard to believe. I heard it said that Finnish people, and you're from Finland, correct?
Yeah.
Finnish people drink more coffee than Americans. Can that be true?
Yeah, more than 2 times, almost 3 times the amount of Americans.
Well, so what's that about? How can that be? Are you guys as sleep deprived as us? No way. You're like one of the happiest countries in the world.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
look at you, you're smiling. I look at you, I feel happy.
The thing, it's actually it's demonized in many ways, and it's actually really good for you. So yeah, Finnish people drink a lot of coffee, and there's reasons why that is, but coffee is good for you. There's a great meta studies, the studies of studies, even to show how healthy coffee is. It's the number one source of antioxidants for many of us, so it's good for longevity. We obviously use it mostly for energy and productivity and brain power. It does have a couple negatives. One of them is that for some people, it's tough for the digestive system. So you get a little bit of uneasy stomach, or whatever. And then
like that brown stuff at the bottom of the pot comes into your stomach.
Also about the acidity. Coffee is quite acidic. And for some people that can cause a little bit of, heartburn and things like that. And then the other one is it can cause jittery feelings. It is a stimulant. It particularly, can be harsh on your adrenals and your natural energy production, but there's ways to combat those 2 negatives. But coffee is a happy thing. That's why I think Finns are, I believe, 4 years in a running happiest country in the world.
There you go. Okay, so you said there's many reasons for why Finns drink a lot of coffee, but you didn't tell us why. So what are the reasons?
Well, first of all,
already happy.
Yeah. First of all, it's very cold. So it's a big, it's a big thing for when it's cold and dark and miserable. So a cup of coffee goes a long way.
As opposed to whiskey?
Yeah. The less whiskey, believe it or not. But the Finnish people are somewhat shy and introverted. There's an old saying that the difference between an extroverted Finn and an introverted Finn is that the introverted Finn is so shy is that when you have a conversation with them, they keep staring at their feet. And then the extroverted Finn, who's super outgoing, will look at your feet.
I've heard that, but not in relation to Finn. Okay.
So I believe coffee, similar to Sweden and Denmark, it's a moment. So usually at lunchtime, or you meet over friends or work, you take a little break from work for a few minutes, you make coffee, and it's like a moment of socializing. I believe similar to whiskey, it can like loosen up even the more shy people and get people.
Really? Coffee does that? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it stimulates the brain in many ways. And gets people going and people are more alert. So I think that's another reason. And then finally, Finns are pretty hardworking, and there was a lot of the time in Finnish independence where very, very poor country, and people would work long days, and you work hard. Coffee does help a lot. So I think for those reasons, it's very popular.
Okay, so you talk about hardworking people. Your family is, did you say, is it 13 generation farmers? Like, I don't think we go back 13 generations in the States. Maybe we do, but tell us about that. Those are the hardest working people in the world, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's now pretty trendy to be a farmer, but it's funny if anybody who's ever worked in a farm, if you actually work in a farm, you realize that it's really difficult, especially if your income relies on it. If you're a hobby farmer where you're farming for the joy of taking care of land, it's a different story. But if your family livelihood is dependent on the yield and the crop and the weather and the next season, it's very difficult. And yeah, my parents are the 12th generation, and then me and my brother are the 13th, and then our kids will be the 14th. And yeah, that's
so
the
does your
long story
family
short.
is your family doing it for the joy? Like, do they do it to make a living? So is it all? It's all automated now, right? Because you're actually in Austin as we're having this interview, so you're not tilling the soil.
Yeah, well, two parts is like Finland. One of the benefits of farming in Finland is that the season is very short. It's a few months.
True.
Negative is you have just one crop, and depending where you are and what you grow, you can have 2, 3 harvests. With fungi, you can even have more per year. But in Finland, farming is mostly one. But yeah, me and my brother are the first generation where our livelihood is not dependent on farming. So it's neither him or I rely on our, rent to be paid and get food on the table from the farming. And it's a hobby where my parents were still relying on it, and it become increasingly difficult to do that. So when I was young, our farm was a big farm, but because agriculture has grown so much, is that now our farm is a small farm, even though the farm has grown since I was a kid, because just the average size of farms have exploded, and people do a lot of monocrops. So they just farm one thing and they try to farm new, really huge volumes too. And the margins on agriculture obviously depend on crop and location, but tend to be like 3%. So like you make a 3% profit.
I'm just curious, the farms are getting bigger. Is that the government buying up the land? Like, how is that working? Because I know in the States, people are quote unquote farmers, but that's because it has to do a lot with tax subsidies, and there's something crazy. And I'm a city girl, so don't quote me, but I think there's something like some people are being paid not to farm. Like it's a whole conundrum going on here in the States. So why is it getting so much bigger in Finland as well?
It's a global phenomenon. So it's not just one country.
Okay.
It's derived from a few things. One positive, I guess, is automation. So the amount of land one person can farm is more. So that's the positive. By using tools and modern technology, you can cover more ground. So there's more efficiencies. Negatively, the margins are getting shrunken. And so you make less and less money. So that means to cover for your overhead, your fixed expenses, you need to farm more and more. And then in many cases, farmers are in massive debt. So weather kills their crop. Now they don't have money to buy next year's crop. Here comes a seed company, a Monsanto, for example, and says, we'll pay your seeds or you get a loan, but you need to use our seeds now. And now you're in their pocket. Or in many cases, farms have existed over the last 20 to 50 years on subsidies. And that's industry and country specific. Certain countries subsidize different things. But the idea is that farmers have been losing money. So if you make $100, your expenses are $120, but then you get $40 from the government. So then you make $20 of profit, if that makes sense.
It makes sense in a governmental bureaucratic way only.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, but at the same time, primary industries, if they wouldn't be farming, so for example, there's countries that are trying to, streamline farming. The thing is, food supply, and there's these buzzwords of like around it, but like people will not then have access to food and calories, which is kind of weird. And in that case, the government must provide subsidies. Those are the farms don't go out of business, but it's not a sustainable model. But if they don't do it, then farmers will go out of business. Inflation will increase even more in food prices, and then people will not have access to food. And who suffers the most? It's pretty much always the lower income people, including farmers, who will be in a dire situation.
Okay, so we're going to pivot and make this a little bit more positive right now. But thank you. It is so fascinating. So one of my children, I told you, I'll talk to you about Brian a little bit more later, but he went to the University of Wisconsin, and his roommate grew up on a farm, a 400-acre working farm. And I remember my son he went out to the farm, and it was an unbelievable experience. And these people they were literally the expression salt of the earth, right? And Brian asked the parents if they ever took a day off. And he said the parents stopped and were like, I think one Christmas we took, because everything, it wasn't automated yet, and everything still needed to be done. And to me, it's amazing. So I know you come from strong stock there. All right. So give us a little bit of your background. I know your mother was like an anatomy and a physiology professor. I'm not sure about your dad. And you actually have a chemistry degree, so you're no dummy. So, and it seemed like you married all the brilliance of your family into your food company. But tell us how you got here.
Yeah, so I grew up in Finland, and my dad is an agronomist, and that's a fancy way of saying he's an educated farmer. And then my mom.
Wait, well, what does that educated farmer meaning what?
Agronomist. Agro meaning agriculture. And that means he has a degree in farming.
Oh, okay. Okay. Got it.
Well, he's like a professional farmer.
Got it.
It's a fancy word.
Okay.
But he's an expert in soil and growing food and forest. Actually, his real specialty is in trees, which is relevant to fungi as well, which I'm known for. But my mom taught physiology and anatomy to nurses. And then I studied first chemistry, then nutrition. And then I've lived in 10 countries around the world.
So hang on. Did you study in Finland? Where did you study?
I've studied in 5 countries, but yes, I started in Finland first.
Okay.
And then lived in 10 countries. And then about 10 years ago, started a functional food company that specializes in many of these quote unquote superfoods.
Okay, but hang on a sec. Hang on. So when you say you lived in 10 countries, now at the time you're in Finland, right? So you guys like cross the border and you're in another country, right? So did you study in the European countries, or did you go around?
Yeah, I studied in US, Canada, France, UK, and Finland. So both.
Okay. Which was your favorite place to study?
They're all different. The educational systems are very different. In the French system, you don't really challenge the teacher. The teacher is always right. And then in the Finnish system, there's a lot of conversation. It's much more open. So each one is different. I do like a lot of the British schooling system. I think there's a lot of beautiful traditions married with some progressive thinking, but it always comes down to who's your teacher. So,
Sure.
and the quality of the group and the quality of the group conversation. So it's very school and professor driven. So I think.
All right, what about Canada and the States?
Well, I think it's beautiful in a way that it's more commercially driven. So, but the negative is it is a business, and universities have, really benefited. They're very capitalistic, even state-based universities, and the student debt has grown much more than inflation. And I don't know if quality of teaching has grown. So I think the main quarrel I would have about North American education is that it's a business, and it's a bad deal for the students, and the education is way too expensive, and a lot of the education therefore is a bad deal. So I would generally regard American students to be very narrow focused and European students to be broadly focused. And then the student debt is one of the worst things about United States, and I think it's a real issue. And I think universities have played taxpayers really badly. So that's
I couldn't agree with you more. When you have unlimited access to loans and you can charge whatever you want, like if any other industry could do that, it's insane. Okay, so you clearly have a very worldly education. So when you were studying in all these different places, how did you get to what you started to talk about before, where with the mushrooms? How did you get there from studying your other types of learning?
I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur as a kid as well. I don't know, was I unhireable or why reason, but I always wanted to start businesses. And I started a few businesses early on that were not slam dunk successes. And I needed to learn more and become a better professional. This was in my late teens, early 20s. And then I went to work in a few companies. I worked in management consulting, and then I worked in the largest tech companies in the world at that time, the largest, I believe. And then in different countries. That was the last one.
Which tech company was that? I'm trying to think which one at the time.
It was HP was at that.
Oh, sure. Okay.
And then, but I wanted to start my own business. And 10 years ago, I launched Four Sigmatic, which is one of the leading kind of mushroom and adaptogen companies, but it's basically functional foods. We make better for you coffee and better for you proteins that we add these ingredients that have, besides the protein and the coffee, have functional benefits to productivity, energy, sleep, whatever. So, and
okay, so how did you marry that passion of the mushrooms with the functional food? Like, were you always salt of the earth? Were you always this organic? Like, did you never sneak a Hershey bar?
Yeah, I believe I was mid-20s when I had my first Hershey bar. Yes. Yeah.
Wait, are you serious?
Yes.
And was it terrible because it was all sugar?
Yes, I think it's really bad chocolate, actually. So I had candy as a child, but it was different kinds of candy. And I would say Hershey's actually like really not tasty. So even if I would take the health aside and I would be like, hey, I want really good chocolate, I absolutely would not get Hershey's.
So what would you take?
I would make it myself. I actually make chocolate regularly. But if I would buy products, there's like 100 brands that would make a better chocolate than a Hershey's.
Okay. All right. So food is such a difficult business. So tell us about, so you're creating functional foods to make them nutrient dense. So take us along that journey. Like it's fascinating to me.
Yeah, I mean, these names and words are constantly evolving as the society is evolving. But functional food example would be that you take a whole food, whatever the whole food is, and it would have a functional benefit for your health. You're not just eating it purely for flavor, but you're eating it for flavor and nutritional value. And and that's been my passion ever since. So even before starting this company, I coach professional athletes in nutrition. Like I mentioned, I study chemistry and nutrition, and I saw the impact that certain compounds could have on your recovery, your cognitive function, your sleep, your skin, your immunity, things like that. So, but having a business in them can be very challenging, especially as an immigrant in the United States. There's positives. One, I like to start with positives. Always I feel like it makes me feel better starting with the good stuff.
There you go.
Everybody needs food. It's a primary industry. Everybody, whatever is happening in the world, when the world goes crazy, people still need to eat, right? And everybody wants to feel good. And actually, not just good, everybody wants to feel better. So wherever you are, you're an avid health enthusiast, or you maybe been busy with family or work and that's not been a priority. You always want to be better tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. So everybody's always like, wherever you are in your journey, you're thinking, how can I be better? So I think those are the beautiful things. And then especially healing people and healing their body and mind. And I get a lot of, we have hundreds of that. We've sold 100 million servings of these functional foods, and we get people writing letters and emails and social media and telling their journey and how they've, done whatever they've done to heal their bodies. And that's really beautiful. That being said, there's a lot of regulation from the government. There's a lot of high cost, very low margins. So the margin of error is tight. And especially in America, Americans spend the most in the world on medication and healthcare, and the least out of disposable income on food. So there's actually like very difficult in America. People spend the least of all the countries as a percentage of disposable income on food. So it's actually really counterintuitive to a lot of Americans that, what Hippocrates already said is let food be thy medicine. And that's not obvious to a lot of Americans. So that's also a challenge.
What do you think that is? I'm surprised about that. Is it because the proportion is just out of whack?
There's a lot of reasons. And if I would have to summarize one reason.
It's okay. I'm a diehard American, but I know we're not perfect. You can lay it on.
I love America. I think
I do too, but I know we're not perfect. I know our education's messed up. I know you watch what Americans eat when you go out to eat, you like want to cringe. You probably want to go under the table.
Yeah. I think American Constitution and American founding fathers created something that nobody's ever created. And the history that America's had, although short, has been second to none. And it's one of the greatest success stories of all time in the human history. And it's a real, that being said, America does, it comes down to dollars. And the fact is you make more money with
we're so focused on capitalism.
And I love capitalism. I think it's great. The challenge is that when you give more power to certain industries, they can make more money and there's barriers. And the fact is you make more money with people who are sick than with people who are healthy. And so it's actually funny. There are countries where the doctor gets paid when you're healthy. So every day you're healthy, you pay the doctor. And then when you're sick, you don't pay the doctor because they didn't do their jobs. Here, it's opposite. You pay the doctor every time you're sick. You don't pay when you're healthy.
Well, we also, Americans don't really take responsibility for our health, right? Mm-hmm. So, most of the disease that we have could be preventable if people ate better, knew how to handle stress, all that kind of stuff. Is that where you're going with this?
Yeah, it's called functional medicine. So there are MDs who are actual doctors, and they are trained in all the things you need for Western medicine, which is very helpful. Like I played soccer growing up and I had 2 knee injuries. So God bless modern medicine for healing my ACL.
Sure.
At the same time, as much as you want to prescribe as an MD, in my opinion, as much as you want to prescribe pharmaceuticals, you should prescribe resting and meditation and exercise and walking and water and hydration and proper nutrition. And those are the bedstone, whatever is going on. And I think that sometimes gets left behind because there's little to no money to be made in food and water and breath work and exercise and walking. There's a lot of money to be made in diet pills and pharmaceuticals and surgeries that will make you thin. And it's good to have options, but it's like that shouldn't be the result. That's my opinion, and I absolutely could be wrong.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, I have a dear friend who's a naturopathic physician, right? And so the first 2 years of his medical school education was regular medical school. And then the next 2 years were herbs, plants, all that kind of stuff. And I've learned so much from him. He's like, look, drugs are pretty much the synthetic version of most of what we have in nature. But in the States, and I do think though there's a paradigm shift going on where the East is meeting West. I do believe that. I hope it's true. To your point, surgery, things like that. Thank God we've had those advances. But for the most part, the healthcare system, in fairness to the physicians, the doctors, they just are not educated themselves in functional foods. So they can't prescribe what they don't know. And to your point, you're not taking them out to dinner if you prescribe X amount of your functional foods like the pharmaceutical companies do, right?
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So tell us about your company.
Four Sigmatic is a functional food company based here in the US. We're based in we've been around for 10 years. Out of that, 6 years in the US. So we started overseas and brought it here. And
you had to make money, right? The States is about money.
Yeah, it's also culture. So I think one of the most beautiful and underrated parts about America is you can go wherever, and there's a lot of tastemakers and opinion leaders, such as artists, so musicians, actors and actresses, artists that impact global culture. So what global culture is really like, this is the ground zero for a lot of trends globally. So to have a global impact and to change consumer behavior, this is the kind of place to be. Mm-hmm. And and we make coffee that has these functional ingredients, these mushrooms and adaptogens that people now talk about, but didn't talk so much about a few years ago. And
this is your intellectual property, if you will. You created this formula for the coffee as a chemist.
Yes, in a way, yes, but we don't own nature. So we don't own.
I didn't know what that expression was for. Now I get it. Okay.
Yeah. So nobody can own nature for a good reason. And we don't want to either. So it's similar. It's more like a recipe. We're actually pretty open about what the recipe is. So you can go to our website and find it out. So we're not trying to hide anything. Instead, we're trying to educate and elevate people by making health fun and tasty. And then today we sell our, proteins and coffees in anywhere from Walmart to Target and for Amazon. But a big part of our journey has been actually podcasts. We've done so much podcast education over the last 6-7 years, and that's been a big part of our journey. And now we have, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of happy customers. And like I said, we've sold 100 million servings of these functional foods so far.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to help here. Okay. So in terms of the functional food, for any listener that that's a doubting Thomas, that's a naysayer, describe, you have different flavors of the coffee. So you have like vanilla coffee. Is that right? Did I read that correctly somewhere?
No, we do have vanilla protein and vanilla creamer, and we use real vanilla instead of natural flavors, which natural sounds good, but it's actually not that good. But we have coffees that are think, so they help you think better. There's ones for balance if you're really stressed. There's decaf products that support your natural relaxation. And then, we have, again, for different states where you are, different kinds of products.
So have you found that you do market different products to different states in the States?
Actually, no. Surprisingly, very little different. So when we sell to Whole Foods or we sell to Walmart, there's actually not a lot of difference. So I would say that's the old way of thinking, is like, hey, somebody in Indiana is so different than somebody in San Francisco. And actually, because of internet, because of things, it comes down to more hobbies, and these are called psychographics, but like behavior. So like interest. So people who are into Four Sigmatic, my company, tend to be into holistic health. They might read books about holistic health. They might listen to podcasts about holistic health. They might enjoy things like walking or forest bathing. They might enjoy things like
Oh,
buying.
forest bathing? What is
It's a concept from Japan, but popular around the world, where you go to the forest and walk in the woods, and that's makes you less stressed. So by walking surrounded in nature, you are less stressed.
Oh, well, that actually, there was a book by Stephen Kotler, I think, The Art of Impossible, and he
Mhm.
coaches high performing athletes, and he talks about going out in nature. It de-stresses you. So it's probably a similar type of concept.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So,
All right. But I'd never heard it before. Forest bathing. Okay. So I learned that. So
yeah.
what tends to be your most popular product? Like for someone that's like, what? Who is this guest Dr. Patty Ann has on? Like she's off her rocker. So what's a functional food that you would recommend for the first one for someone to try?
Yeah. We have top five often number one best-selling instant coffee on Amazon. So we have one of the best-selling instant coffees in Amazon, and it tastes way better than normal instant coffee. But it also
Yeah, I was gonna say I heard instant coffee. I'm like, yeah.
yeah, it's delicious and loved by hundreds of thousands of people. But it also doesn't give you the jittery feelings that other coffees have, and it only has half of the caffeine of normal coffee. So people who are really sensitive to caffeine, they can enjoy it. So it's a better way to drink coffee. Our ground coffee is a top 10 ground coffee in the US as well. According to these measurements, like this thing called spins. So it's organic, fair trade, elevated coffee, and that's one of the most popular. We also have now
It's called Four Sigmatic coffee.
yes.
Is that the okay? Because I want people to be able to get it.
Yeah. And then our plant-based protein is a top 15 protein in the natural protein channel, and that's also very popular. So it's like cleaner, much cleaner protein than most plant-based, organic. Doesn't give you tough digestive issues like some proteins make you feel yucky, but it gives you the benefits of protein for health and longevity.
Now, is that a powder or a bar?
Protein powder, yeah.
And do you have bars? Because I know so many of the protein bars, you might as well have a Hershey bar. So
yes, we don't do bars. They're very difficult to make clean. So most protein bars are actually not good for you.
right.
But we do make products that are like we have these like plant-based creamers, and then we have coffee pods. If you're a Keurig pod user, those are also very popular and sold by Walmart. So like if we try to meet the consumer halfway. So if you're early in your health and wellness journey and you're like, what are these freaking mushrooms and adaptogens? I don't even know what that word is. We try to make it easy by having like eco recyclable coffee pods you can put in your coffee machine. You have exactly use it just the same way as anything else, but makes you feel much better.
Okay. So let's talk about mushrooms. Now, I went to NYU, so I lived in Greenwich Village for like 15 years back in the day. Everybody was off their rocker. I was a nerd, so I wouldn't go near a mushroom with a 10-foot pole. So I do understand it's very maligned. So enlighten us.
Well, mushrooms, or the kingdom of where mushrooms live, is called fungi or fungi. Either way is right. There's no right or wrong. Tomato, tomato. And they're one of the six kingdoms in biology, five or six, also debatable. So similar to plants and animals, fungi are their own kingdom, and they're everywhere, literally everywhere. From Antarctica to the stratosphere, you can find fungi. And they're on our skin, they're in our gut. So we have in our digestive system, we have all kinds of fungi. So you want it or not, you will consume fungi. Fungi is also needed for every pretty much plant to collect water, all the trees to collect water. We actually use them for yeast, which is a type of fungi, to make beer, wine, bread, cheeses. You use them in fermented products, sauerkraut, kombucha. Use it in About half of the best-selling drugs and pharmaceuticals in the world are made out of fungi. Penicillin would be the most well-known, but literally they're everywhere. But in Anglo-Saxon culture, unlike the Latin or some of the Asian or Slavic cultures, there's a fear of fungi because there's also bad mushrooms. So here's the main kicker is animals and fungi shared ancestors. So we actually are, you and I are up to half mushroom. We share DNA, up to half of our DNA and 85% of our ribosomal RNA with fungi, which means we're very similar. Good news is fungal medicine is really bioavailable. Bad news, we're really prone to fungal diseases. So the idea of fearing for fungi is really irrational because we don't fear plants, and there's way more lethal plants in the world than there are lethal fungi. We don't fear animals the same way, even though there's way more animals that can kill us than that are household pets. But we have this fear of fungi because they're smaller and very individual. So bacteria and fungi have suffered from this food racism. And there's a lot more focus on plants and animals and not as much focus on bacteria and fungi, even though all the evidence is very clear on how they impact our well-being or potentially our disease.
So how did that happen? How did it get such a bad rep? I mean, again, I heard what you just said, but
it's not globally a bad rep. It's very specific to Anglo-Saxon heritage, and there's two theories. Nobody really knows for sure because it's a long time ago, but one is around mold. Mold is a bad type of fungi, and there are many kinds of molds. And it probably in England, where there's a lot of moisture and whatever, people got sick. So that's one theory. Mm-hmm. The second theory is what you were referring to with your NYU is psychedelic mushrooms. So there's a small group of psychedelic fungi. By the way, there's also psychedelic plants. So that's not just, we're not free of fungi. Very few people stop eating tomatoes just because there are psychedelic plants, but for some reason, people don't want to buy mushrooms because they're psychedelic mushrooms. They're an exception, not the rule. But there are psychedelic fungi that is part of, arguably, it's not even debatable, but they're part of our heritage, particularly Christianity. Christianity and psychedelic mushrooms have shared lineage. And when men are more hunters, women were gatherers, and women had a lot of herbal knowledge for healing and also these psychedelics. And the burning of the witches in medieval time could have been linked with the use of fungi, and fungi for psychedelic purpose could have been scary for governments. Therefore, there was a lot of fear around them. But for sad reason, Anglo-Saxon, including North Americans, particularly Americans, are afraid of fungi for no reason.
So how did you, do you have to consistently overcome that bias for your company to grow?
Yes, that's the
short answer. So how do you do that?
Education.
I'm picturing the little mushroom with the hood doing a little dance and we're good guys.
Well, different people react differently. Some people want to hear the science, so I've written books about them. Some people want to hear the hardcore facts. I would say that's still a minority, at least in America. People actually don't want to hear the facts. They want to be entertained or edutained. So where they want entertainment and education together. So then you do.
Probably true in the States. I could see that. Yeah.
So then those dancing mushrooms help, and telling stories and jokes help. But the real answer is the most consistent and eventually the most important way how people learn to change their mind or change their behavior is to get noticeable benefits in their own life. So trying something like a mushroom coffee and feeling so much better when you're converted. And in order for people to give it a chance, most commonly, one of their friends or someone they trust will say, "Hey, this sounds absolutely crazy, but you need to try this mushroom coffee." And they're like, "I don't know, that sounds sketchy." And the friend or relative or someone you trust will say, "No, trust me, it's really weird, but it's legit. It's not psychedelic. It's really tasty. You're not going to even taste the mushrooms. Try it. You'll feel amazing." They finally do. And then they do feel amazing. And then they go and tell the next person. So it's a slow way It's not fast. It's not like becoming a massive company overnight. For us, it's been a 10-year journey. But that's the most consistent, reliable way for people to change their mind and try something new.
Okay, so I'll give you a little hint, not that you need my help. You just need to find that one woman connector in every organization and neighborhood and school. There's always that one. And all she'll say is, you have to try this coffee. Don't talk about mushrooms. Don't say anything. I'm telling you, you have to try this coffee. Then after they try it, then you say, how was it? Good, good, good. Have another cup. Good, good, good. You know what's in it? Mushrooms. That's the way you do it. And then it'll be a game changer overnight. It's just like, we're like, where'd you get that purse? Oh my gosh, I have to try it.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, the good news is
that. Your wife would tell you that. That's how it works.
Good news is the mushrooms are super trendy now. There's a documentary on Netflix called Fantastic Fungi that is very, very, very popular.
Are you in it? Are you starring in it?
No, it's more around how mushrooms grow very slowly. On time-lapse videos, beautiful videography, but with some educational in it. But the main point is there's books now that are very popular around this topic, including mine that people love.
And give yourself the plug. Let's go. Healing adaptogens. Speak. Go ahead. Let them hear.
No, just to finish the thought is, there's even like, I was just this weekend, we got a gift card. I got married recently and we got a gift card to Anthropology. And I went to on the website, I have no financial whatever interest with the business, but I went to and I found like hundreds of products that have fungi in it, for kids products to like cups and this and that. So there is definitely like a growing interest in mushrooms, and people are very interested in it. It's very of the moment right now. So I think more and more people are mushroom friendly and less people are mycophobic. So that's positive.
Awesome. Okay. So seriously, tell us about your book though.
I've written a few books. My latest book is called Healing Adaptogens, and you might be like, adapto what? But adaptogens are super herbs and super mushrooms that help you combat stress. So they can help you think better, make your skin better, all by balancing stressors in life. These are things, some of them maybe things like turmeric or real cacao or ginseng. And some of them are some you might not have heard as much, like ashwagandha or lion's mane. But these are things that have been used for hundreds, if not thousands of years, but also have hundreds of credible research papers to back for their benefits and how they help balance our body in a safe, natural, holistic way.
Awesome. Awesome. Now you are in, you said Walmart, Target, and Whole Foods. Those are two at least, very different price ranges. So what is your price, and is it affordable, or is it she? So like, the joke is Whole Foods is whole paycheck. Walmart's very different. So where is the price point?
Yeah, I think we're pretty affordable. Obviously, like being organic and fair trade, we're more expensive than your Maxwell House and Folgers, but we're not any more expensive than the other sort of specialty products. So at Walmart, for example, a lot of the pricing were aligned with the other products on the shelf, so you don't have to pay a premium. But you can go to Amazon and see our prices and or whatever. But I think a common misconception is that Whole Foods is very expensive, and why they do carry some more expensive items. But ever since they've been owned by Amazon, a lot of the prices have gone down. And then Walmart, people think, is just selling only sugar and white flour. And while that does exist, you'd be surprised at places like Costco and Walmart how many clean products are now available, because more and more consumers, just regular Americans, are also seeking healthy, better for you solutions that have clean label and not full of ingredients you don't recognize or high amounts of sugar or processed ingredients. While that's still a minority, but more and more people are asking, and Walmart and Target and Costco and whatever, they're all in the in the business of having happy customers. And if customers are enough asking for products, even weird products like mushroom coffee or plant-based protein powders, people will then, those retailers want to carry those products.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I would never want you to disparage your competitor, although I don't think these are competitors. But what's the difference besides the fungi, obviously, between your coffee and, say, Starbucks?
Yeah. So most Starbucks is a big company, obviously, and they have a lot of products. So it's hard to just say one product, right? You can buy a frappuccino with 40 grams of sugar, but let's just focus
Let's just go with coffee, just
on the coffee beans and not a prepared drink. Most of the products are not organic. So first and foremost, so what you're consuming is pesticides 100% of the time, pretty much.
That was so good.
They don't test for mycotoxins, so coffee beans easily gather mold. So then you might be getting these things that are not good for you. And then they're fair trade. So they're like, coffee is one of the most sprayed crops for pesticides, but one of the most abused from a supply chain. So those are reasons. Also, although some people love it.
I'm sorry. What do you mean by abused by the supply chain?
Well, and that would be a whole nother 1 hour podcast. But long story short, the coffee farmer and the people actually growing the coffee bean don't get living wage, and they're the depending on the country and the environment, and a lot of coffee that is sold mainstream market are not fair trade or not that sustainable. I'm not saying that's Starbucks specific, but most company products I've seen from Starbucks are not certified organic, neither fair trade. So those are commonly what I've noticed. But again, Starbucks is a huge company with hundreds of products. So it's like very diverse, but most of them are not organic and not fair trade. And then to my taste, they are very burnt coffees and then depending on the coffee you buy from Starbucks, ours is also 100% Arabica. So there's a couple varieties, and some of the Starbucks coffees use this lower quality bean. But that's more flavor and preference. People have different flavor opinions. So some people swear by it, but personally, I don't think Starbucks tastes that good, but that's just my opinion.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. So, and what's next for you?
I'm about to have our second child, and that's the first thing in my mind. And then
congratulations. How old is your first?
18 months.
Let the games begin.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm all for it. And then I have this new book called Healing Adaptogens that's available wherever books are sold, bookstores and online. And then obviously focused on my company Four Sigmatic, where I'm the founder and CEO. And then I'm trying to hopefully learn more about fungi and grow as a person. So that's important.
Great. What is the most difficult part of your business?
Everything is difficult. Selling is difficult. Formulation is difficult. Sourcing is difficult. But I would say for me and most entrepreneurs, it all comes down to people. So the best moments about having a business is people, and the hardest moments that you will ever face are people. And so everything is difficult. Like there's nothing easy. It's kind of like farming, but different. Like I'm exhausted in different ways. If I work in the farm, I'll be different, tired, but equally like challenging. So the stress is different. As a farmer, you think you don't have stress. You stress about the weather all the time, especially in harvest season. You're looking at the weather forecast that changes every hour and you're panicking if it's going to rain or not. And as a business owner, you're worrying about other things. It's just the way of life. But I firmly believe that challenges and challenging times create strong people create good times. And that's the journey I'm on, personally. So
awesome. Now, do you have a co-partner, or it's just you? Is your wife in the business?
No, she has her own business for sun protection, actually protecting skin. A lot of skin damage is created by sun, and she has like UPF proof clothing and visors, which is separate. But no, I have a founding team with Four Sigmatic that was with me since the beginning, and then we have given employees equity so they feel like ownership in the business as well.
That's awesome. So that they feel like they're a part of something. That's awesome. All right. What's the last book you reread and why?
I actually reread a lot of books. I read very few new books. So it's for disclaimer, I reread a lot, and I have multiple bookshelves, but one of them is always by my desk where I look at books that I go back to. I believe the last one was this. I can pick it up.
Sure.
It's called Damn Good Advice. It's by George Lewis. It's like for creatives. It's more around like how to think or operate as a creative. So that's one of the things that I pretty recently went through. So
that sounds like you. That sounds like you. And my last question, what's the one song that you can't live without?
Can't live without. That's a high barrier. There's a lot of songs I love. I was just in a concert a couple of days ago with my wife. See the Lumineers.
Who'd you go here?
The Lumineers.
Yes, of course. Was it good?
And then James Bay was the opening act, and that was great. But can't live without. That's a harder, because I feel like I don't know if there's a song I could not live without. But songs.
Or how about wouldn't want to live without?
Oh, wouldn't want to live without.
I'll change it for you.
I Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
It's just a happy song. Especially there's this Hawaiian ukulele version from this guy is Hawaiian. I believe he's passed away quite a few years ago, but particularly that version. But I think it's just a happy song, and there's I think something about circle of life, but in a happy, positive way, and perspective and being in the know. I don't know, that song feels good. But
okay, great.
There's so many great songs to choose from.
I'm just curious, what was your wedding song?
So wedding song, the first song, or those we had when we got married, we had two of our friends played who are professional musicians. One played the cello, one played guitar, and we got married in the redwoods. So we were in a circle of redwood trees that are the oldest and tallest trees in the world. And we played different songs, and when my wife entered, it was Beatles' "Here Comes the Sun," which is it's also a beautiful song.
Oh, and she has her skincare product that's so poignant. That is so awesome. All right, so Tero, how can people find out more about you? Where can they order your product and your book? Lay it all on.
Book is wherever books are sold, so you can go to your bookstore, big or small. Or Amazon, I believe. And same with the products. You can find them increasingly many places. I think I mentioned you can go to Walmart, Target, Whole Foods, although with Walmart and Target, there's a lot of locations. So again, online is, depending where you live, it's the easiest way, but you find us more and more in different retail stores. And then you can follow my company, Four Sigmatic, FOURSIGMATIC, in all the social channels. We have fun little education about these things. And then I'm not that active on social media, but on Instagram, it's I am Tero, Tero.
That's right. I know that because I linked in with you. And when I linked in, it said, I will not be responding.
I gotta work on that eventually. But there's just so much to do, and think that time is the precious resource, and gotta be mindful of that.
It can be such a distraction. That's true. All right. Well, thank you so much. This was so great. I hope you get a ton of new clients. I would be surprised if you don't. So thank you so much for being our guest today.